Hey guys, today I'm going to be taking you through how to build a professional portfolio site for, say, a PT trainer, how to build a web application like a gaming tracking site, or just a generic website to host a Linux distribution you built, for instance. Using using one tool and one tool only, Visual Studio Code. What is Visual Studio Code? Visual Studio Code is a coding-based application that essentially allows you to contain your entire code base inside the application. So when you're using things like AI, you can give it full access to, say, the code base and the terminal, for instance, so it can run and test and open up websites and web applications, or build and install new repositories that it may need. And yeah, so don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe, because there's more to come with agentic workflows. So to get started, you're going to need to go over to the extensions marketplace, where you can install essentially your coding agent. So I'm going to be using Codex for this example, but you can either use Claude, Gemini, or again Codex. It's entirely up to you. It just comes down to whatever coding agent you want to use. There is also the coding applications, or the AI applications like Codex or Claude. They're the desktop applications that can also use code and do all the things that Visual Studio Code can do. But yeah, we'll just be using code. Essentially, you need to go and do some research into a framework, and a framework is something that allows you to create a request, like a chat box message, send it through a router, have it be authorized, then go to the renderer, which could be a Node.js server, which then could possibly create something like a Fluids 2 output. So that could actually be working with AI. So you could send one message through to the AI, like what we'll be doing right now. So we'll be sending a message to the AI about our website, basically, where we're currently building the product structure for the site, where it's got some photos to work with. Right, and as you can see, as we're prompting it, we're telling it we're creating this. You need a way to map images and so on and so forth from public. Because that's what the public folder does, is when you're creating a website, a public folder essentially is what you give to the public world, like so your images, your scripts and stuff like that. You don't keep your back-end code in the public folder. You'd keep that preferably in something called an SRC, or the source folder, because you can then maintain what people view. And to rebuild your site, then it takes you to call to each individual page to rebuild the entire site. That's what public does. Public is essentially what you give to the public, all at once. But yeah, here you can see Codex is essentially going through and mapping out all the images for the website that we may need, because I gave it a bunch of images that I took myself walking around and stuff like that. So it built a decent site, but I didn't exactly like how the nav bar looked. So I went back to Visual Studio Code and went, right, we can change how this navigation bar looks. It essentially needed to use something more from the Next.js. So Next.js has these cool like floating effect nav bars, where it's interesting. You'll see the output in a minute. So as we send that and let it continue, and we also told it needs to be from USD to Great British Pounds, as it rebuilds the site and comes up with everything we need, as you can see, the Next.js bar came in, or Fluid. I can't remember exactly what one I used. Again, you need to go learn frameworks to understand how different frameworks can help you build a website. So for instance, another framework here I'm going to be using is Material 3 by Google. So essentially, I didn't exactly like, again, how the portfolio page looked. So I went to Codex, we need to try and change this to Material, but it didn't exactly work. And so then I had to convert to go into Gemini, essentially, because Gemini is Google and Google is an AI made by a company would know how to work with that framework the best. So essentially, I turned to Gemini and turned around, copied and pasted the source code, which essentially you can get back from yourself by pressing F12 from the keyboard and then pressing the top little corner button, which is the screen with the mouse pointer, and you can just find the element. And once you've put your element in and told it essentially what you need, so I want it to be more of a material free slideshow, yada yada yada, not the current custom slideshow style we have right now, because that's what it was using. It was using some kind of custom styled slideshow framework that was mixture from like Fluid and Next.js. So essentially, I prompted Google. Google was like, "All right, cool. I know what I'm doing," and it started to search and act like an agent and become like an agent like the other ones. The only downfall with Google is it doesn't exactly know how to sandbox very well. So they don't exactly build a sandbox for the agent. So every time it goes to use a file, you've got no auto mode. So essentially, after it reading a bunch of files, it was like, right, I'm gonna start trying to run these applications and editing this stuff. So essentially, I had to go back and forth, back and forth. Whereas the difference with like Codex and Claude, basically, you can just put them into full auto mode and it can run everything it needs as long as you give it permissions to run what it needs. But I wouldn't advise keeping really personal stuff on your computer at that point because you're searching, you could essentially come across to a prompt injection that essentially allows you to, that gives out, like, say, your SSH key, for instance, and stuff like that, which is not ideal. But anyway, letting it progress on and giving it the permissions it needed, it basically then started to rebuild the picture collage, and it built it using the material framework. And I actually did it a pretty well job. I could have turned around and told it, all right, that's decent, but I want it to build in a styled select, so where you have like one main image and then it goes down in a right hand column. But I was like, this is good enough. It's just an example for a video. So yeah, I hope you like and subscribe to the video, and yeah, because it helps a lot. And stay tuned.